And so this is a letter from San Francisco, number 1, April 1978. Sorry it has taken me so long to write, but my time in Beantown was fun. Well, staying with an albino is always fun. The Suicide Commandos were super. Every time I see them, I like them more. The new songs were great. My fave was Take a Dive. It was a gas to hang out with Chris et al. Again, getting drunk, busting in into interviews and the like. I relished what might have been my last spree of getting drunk and being an ass for a while anyway. The first night they played, I got stranded at the Rat, a good 6-7 miles from where I was staying, so I decided to walk. This may not seem like a major feat, but I had consumed vast quantities of firewater, and it was really, really cold. So anyway, I got as far as Cambridge before motor functions refused to operate. At this point, I sought refuge, screamed sanctuary, and fell to the floor in the lobby of the nearest open building. The next morning, I was rather rudely and summarily awoken by a big thump on my feet. My eyes opened, and I thought I was in the Hampshire post office, because I was surrounded by little mailboxes. The only thing not very consistent with this image was the audio track. There was a middle-aged, obviously distraught female voice screaming, "He doesn't live here! He doesn't live here! He doesn't live here!" After 2 or 3 seconds of sniveling about, I finally focused on a cleaning woman who looked a great deal like Hazel, pointing an accusing finger at me and yelling, accompanied by a rather slender gendarme who asked me what I was doing. I stood up, said, "Oops, this isn't my building." The cop assured me it wasn't, so I left. Since it was around 5 a.m., 20 degrees, and I was broke, I decided to find a new place to sleep. Not many warm, free places. Dogs. Hove into view. So when I saw the phone booths by the Harvard Square magazine stand, my heart broke into a little improv along the lines of, "Be it ever so humble, there's no place like home." Times being what they were, I proceeded to the most easternly booth and went to sleep standing up, or actually leaning against the glass. My reverie, however, was broken a scant 2 hours hence by a myopic young woman who was blathering into a telephone in the booth next to mine, thrusting her largest digit in my direction. That was the last straw. Damn the warmth. Damn the solitude. I left said booth and did not look back. I got to where I was staying a couple of hours later, and jockey-shorted Robbie let me in. I hung around Boston for the duration of the Commandos' stay, then hot-footed it to Amherst. I crashed around the Pioneer Valley for a day or two, got some dough together, and bought a ticket for San Francisco. I then left the Amherst area for good. As far as New York, I sat with a real pretty young wasp fresh person from Smith. I acted semi-rude and intelligent, so we struck it off pretty well. That was to be the last of my good companionship. I hung around the Pork Authority for 4 hours, then lit out via Continental Trailways. Fortunately, as far as Philly, I was companionless and allowed to sit in my back seat, alone, my only company the toilet to my right, smoking Chesterfield Kings and feeling funked and blue about what might have been. At Philly, my luck broke. Louis boarded. Louis was 4 long feet of 4-eyed 8-year-old. No Texan he. I was barraged by questions, always of unerring absurdity. Did I know where San Francisco was? Did I want to wash and dry? Could I really smoke cigarettes on a bus? Did I really like girls? What an innuendo to catch. I put up with the little pinhead for the length of Pennsylvania. No mean feat for me in a depressed state of mind, but the breakfast stop found us in Pittsburgh. It was here I had to make a choice. I could either go on to SF through St. Louis, or I could add a cool 20 hours and take the southern route. I decided to make my decision over a hearty breakfast. In that the bus station's cafeteria was jam-packed, I ventured forth into the cruel Pennsylvania morn. I walked into the first likely place I saw. As far as I can tell, the White Tower Diner, before 6 a.m. anyway, is the hangout of the walking wounded of World War II and the gallant nurses who served them. It was truly horrible, and I made up my mind that accompanying Louis to Reno, he had made his destination painfully clear in the preceding 8 hours, would only add mental insult to mental injury. Thus, I decided to take the southern route. The next few days were uneventful. I learned to feign sleep when new passengers were aboard, and in this way, stretched across the seats, avoided companions almost all the way to L.A. Of course, during this time, I was not wont for companionship. In fact, I spent many hours discussing the merits of the Charlie Daniels Band and their ilk with my confreres. We also spoke of gun laws, drinkin', and pussy. I'm not sure if you're aware of my feminist, non-sexist, no matter how superficial leanings, but it was all I could do to not lash out at these goops, re-education being out of the question. Several states were crossed, and I at last landed in California, L.A. Finally, at a destination of sorts, I bid a fond and much-deserved adieu to my new chums. I was now having a 9-hour layover in L.A. before my trip to San Francisco, so I decided to do the town. After 5 or so hours of complete tedium in a dead, dying burg that not only missed my rush of 78, but also the legendary rushes of 49 and 67, I had seen it all. 4 hours later, I was again on the bus. For some reason, whenever I think of California, I see it as not being too big and being warm everywhere. What a misconception. The ride from LA to SF took 9-10 hours, and San Francisco is not warm. Being totally broke, my first priority upon entering the promised land was obtaining a job. This was not as easy a task as I had hoped. Since I have been here, I have applied as a volunteer for 3 medical studies, more later, rolled and delivered horrible junk mail circulars from 5 a.m. till 6 p.m., and applied for some jobs, mostly at record stores. The first lab study should come up this week, or the next. It involves some bearded schmo squeezing my eye with forceps for $25 per hour. The second lab study involved being in a psychiatric ward for 3 weeks and taking radioactive THC intravenously. I got through all the psychological and physical tests with flying colors. I lied when necessary, only to be shut down at the starting gate. My veins were too deep to have 4 constant IV jobbers and still be able to do 10 blood tests on test days without turning me into a human pincushion. Ah, well, I don't smoke that much pot anyway. I start the 3rd test tomorrow. It doesn't pay as much as test number 2, $25 per day plus room, board, a personal high-end color TV, but it does pay $15 a visit. What happens is that I get my carbon dioxide enriched and my oxygen reduced. Then I get 3 spinal taps. Supposedly very painful, but I need the money real bad. On the job front, I should find out within the next 10 days or so whether I got a job at a record store. If I didn't, whoops. I guess what happens is either head for Southern California or Minneapolis. Steve told me he would put me up for a few months, and if the commandos sell records, they get more equipment, which means I get a job as a roadie. Southern California means Emily gives me Devo's address, and I bug them until they give me a job, because it's cheaper than a lawsuit. It's funny, though, no matter what you may think of me, my whole life, since 12 and the advent of high school, I've had a very New York, cynical view of the West Coast. Regardless, once out here, though, I really enjoy it. The record stores are great. None of this New York collector's store garbage. It's very nice, and not out of the realm of possibility I'll spend some time here. Letter number 2. Sitting around Frisco drinking Rainier Ale, the Haffenreffer of the West Coast, which was a cheap beer of my college days around here. Listening to Beefheart and smoking yet another pack of Chesterfields, I have now saved over 200 gift coupons. Main news item is my recent employment by the company started by Mr. Ray Kroc. McDonald's is certainly a wonderful environment for a young man such as myself, and my horrible and ugly Filipino supervisor has assured me that I can go far here, as I am quite apt at hamburger management. All I can say is I spend every waking hour looking for another job. I can't believe these stiffs. Most of them are foul white trash with rotten teeth. White trash, white fucking trash. This ain't no Chris Mako's photo book. This is real life. I can't believe these miserable twerps. They won't shut up. They want to talk all about their rotten lives. They dress like shit. They tell rotten jokes. They all smoke cools. They spell shitty. They think wedding is spelled wadding. They won't believe me when I tell them different. They think I'm trying to fuck them up. The manager is an asshole. His name is Manny. He has rotten skin. He smells like shark bait. Everything is greasy. They only have Diet 7-Up. All the food is stale. I have to be work at 6 a.m. Sharp. They made me buy black pants. Jeans are no good. I have to shave every morning. I can't drink beer on the job. My pants won't hold a crease. I don't stutter. When I get off work at 2, I sell blood. I walk to work. Sometimes it's raining. I quit. Well, actually, I haven't quit yet. But I have an interview at a photo store on Monday, so maybe I'll quit then. Haven't seen my Devo article yet, but I'm sure Andy cut some stuff out. The only thing I know for sure he excised was the part about Kenny Rogers puking blood and absinthe all over a young girl as he got out of a yellow limousine. Although I swore in my mom's beard that I was telling it like I saw it, he saw through my little ruse and took it out anyway. C'est la vie. I really hope to write a big article for him called "Wish They Could All Be California Girls? Think Again, Sport," describing how all the bands out here that have girls in them are about as much fun as a spoiled cat with worms and whine just as loud. I had originally planned to write a Viva Girls type piece, but after seeing a couple of them, I realized I have to take a different tack. Naomi Ruth Eisenberger, ex-Dan Hicks, was as pleasant as a rat Felcher's picnic, and the others were just as bad. I was really waiting for something great of Naomi, too, because Rockette Morton, ex-Beefheart, was in her band. Turns out the high point of her act is the 4-minute interlude before she comes on stage, when Rockette does the tune Winged Tuscadero, no relation to Pinky Tuscadero of Happy Days fame, that he originally did with Mallard. So much for the girls out here, they all treat me like a syphilitic boll weevil, and if I can get revenge, believe me, I will. As far as major concerts go, the only one I've been to lately was the second-to-last show ever at Winterland, the Tubes and the Ramones on the 28th of December, one day after my 22nd birthday of all things. The opening band was ex-Airplane Jack Cassidy's SVT, his new wave band. They sucked. The Ramones were great, and the Tubes, with their new Less is More stage show, played for about an hour and a half too long. The only truly wonderful parts of their 3-hour set was Fee's rap about fucking cows, very humorous in a local sort of way, and the Baba O'Reilly Kids Are All Right segue. For the first hour or so, I was pressed right against the stage, no seats on the floor, and it was very uncomfortable. People there told me it was more compressed than it had been for the Pistols, where a friend of mine passed out and remained standing for the 45 minutes it took to revive him. The actual set was pretty boring, at least in comparison to the LSD freakout it had the night before. What happened was my roommates had gone back east, and I was left to fend for myself in our fairly spacious apartment. Friends had previously supplied us with a supply of pure mescaline, psilocybin, LSD, and D-meth, the quarter of the methamphetamine that is the active isomer, so I was well stocked in drugs. The night of the 27th, this being my birthday, I decided to get fucked up. I ate a lot of mescaline, then decided, what the heck, I'll do some acid too. The LSD was in a vial in a freezer. If you've never seen raw LSD, you can't imagine how small a container of 25 to 30 250 microgram hits is. I decided to dose myself by licking the end of a matchstick and eating whatever stuck. In 5 to 10 minutes, I was fucked up, as the hippies say. And I sat at the dining room table listening to the local new wave radio show, which happened to be playing exclusively Phil Spector stuff as it was his birthday too, reading the Melody Maker article about the B-Stiff tour and watching Mutiny on the Bounty out of the corner of my eye. I first saw that flick at Radio City Music Hall in '64 or so and loved it. Reading the article was taking time, and occasionally I'd look up and survey the scene on and across the street. Full well knowing I was whacked on drugs, it still seemed as if there was a great deal of well-lighted activity going on out there. All of a sudden I heard ambulance sirens and turned, looked up to catch Marlon Brando's gaze on the TV. At that instant, everything gelled, and I realized that it was time for me to die. I immediately hallucinated flying across the table, smashing through the window and being run over by an auto on the street below. It was wild. I was very scared. Everywhere I turned, I saw the specter of death. As I walked into my room, I saw the shotgun and shells in Corey's room. Once in my room, I saw only my straight razor and the 4-story drop out the back window. I figured I'd just to keep my mind off it, as even when I poured myself a ginger ale, I hallucinated a counter full of broken glass and blood. A trip to the kitchen only made me think of all the knives there, and when I tried to purge myself by writing down my feelings, I suddenly realized it had the tone of a suicide note. Yikes. I finally got a hold of my old Hampshire pal Josh, who lives out here, but he would only joke around as I sounded real normal. None of my old friends can believe I could ever take too much acid, as I used to eat more of it than anybody they'd ever seen. Eventually, it was around 4 a.m. on the East Coast, I decided to call an old friend of mine who works on a crisis counseling line. I woke her up, much to the chagrin of her beau, and we talked for quite a while. At last I felt better, and rather than run up a totally unbelievable phone bill, I chose to call a local crisis line. This real dumb jerk answered and proceeded to tell me of all the troubles he'd had. Told me to go to a bar and meet a girl. What? I couldn't fucking believe it. Here was this ridiculous turd telling me to go out, pick up a girl, then it'd be okay. I had to hear about the technique he'd used to great success only 3 weeks earlier. I just started talking to her, and now she's one of my best friends. Huh? Come on. In the middle of his pickup tips, I realized, well, at least I'm not this asshole, so how bad off can I be? I felt sorry, insulted for the dope, and I hung up. At that moment, I wasn't high. The only explanation I can give for my sudden sobriety is that I willed myself down. I've only been high for about 2 hours, and the mescaline lasts for 12, the LSD for 6, but I was down. Neat. I was real happy. It was strange, though. The next time I do hallucinogens, I suppose I'll do them with people around. It's hard to keep an eye on yourself, but what the hey.